Earthwalker, The Seduction of Decklan Holmes, by Lexaroy Clark. Read to you by Merrill Matthews. Falling in love with an angel is like falling in love with a supernova. It's as cosmic as it is unrealistic. You can be physically shaken by its splendor, or so wholly debased by your own sense of awe that you weep to think it's anything but a dream. You can tell yourself that simply being aware of it means something profound, something real. You can rationalize it all you want, but in the end, you're bound to learn that this celestial body can never love you back, not the way you need it to. So yes, Decklan knew that falling in love with an angel was absurd, maybe even a little insane, but falling in love with a demon, that was something else entirely. Chapter 1. Good morning, Flawless. A low Irish accent growled into the nape of her neck, hot breath sending chills across her throat and jawline. Heavy with morning weariness, his graveled voice sounded predatory, animalistic. She liked it. Flawless today, am I? Emitting a pleasant sigh as she stretched into his chest, Decklan Holmes twisted to drape a pale arm around her admirer's shoulders. Her auburn hair fell lightly over her forehead as she looked up at him in the meager bit of light creeping through the open window. It was impossible not to marvel at him. He was practically asleep, and still she could swear he was examining her through closed lids. Yesterday I was perfect. The day before that, I was exquisite. You aren't just reaching for synonyms, are you, Mr. O'Shea? If so, I have to wonder. She lifted the blanket to peer beneath. Where exactly are you keeping the thesaurus? Eyes still closed, Errol's lips smiled against her skin. Just shut up and take the compliment, love. Honestly, sometimes you can be such a pain in the... Don't even consider finishing that sentence. Or what? His smile widened. Use your imagination. Oh, I am. She moved a hand as if to strike him in a slow and playful manner. He caught her wrist and kissed it. Much as you like getting me worked into a frenzy, Mr. Brazen, I think it's only fair to remind you, she grinned, bringing her mouth up against his as she spoke. I'm neurotic, and I carry a gun. A really big one with lots of oomph. Trouble has never been spelled quite so clearly as that. Irish, remember, love, I like trouble. She shoved impishly at his chest as she attempted to pull herself from his bed. Ugh, so cheesy, and a terrible excuse to boot. Seriously, I'm embarrassed for you right now. So now I'm beneath you. He pulled her back down into the sheets. That can be reversed, you know. Damn it, Errol. She laughed. I need to get to work. So do I. Pinning her beneath him, he continued to make his studious probing of her neck. But I also need to make a point. What point are we talking about exactly? Her words trailed off, teasing. Well, that depends. On whether or not a brilliant. He kissed her shoulder. Sophisticated. His mouth moved to her neck. And gorgeous creature such as yourself. He hovered at last above her mouth. Could ever be wooed with euphemism. He chuckled, his hands roaming in suggestive directions. Relenting, if only for a moment, she shuddered, arching into his mouth with vigor. Then she abruptly snaked her arm around his. Grabbing him by the wrist, she flipped him to his side and kissed the back of his neck with a giggle. He grunted in frustrated surprise as she darted from the bed altogether, giving him no time to react. Nope, I can't. She grinned again, this time from across the room. But you at least get points for upping the ante in your game of flattery. Errol buried his face into the pillow, moaning, Oh, why do I torture myself pining for a woman who can kick my ass? It's not fair. Oh, cry me a river, she giggled unsympathetically. He rolled onto his back and laced his fingers behind his head, accenting his well-muscled and well-tattooed arms. Between the ink and the permanent 5 o'clock shadow, only the most inquisitive of people would have had any idea that he worked as an attorney, and a respected one at that. His contrary appearance was one of the many things that made him so attractive. And he was so damned attractive. She stared at him from beneath a tousled mop of hair, her green eyes enjoying the view far more than decency should ever allow. She tugged unconsciously at the single earring dangling from her left ear. Of the multiple piercings there, it was the only one that was anything more than a stud. Perfectly aware of her study of him, he watched her rummage for clothes with glittering eyes. Fine, fine. I should know better than to argue with a gorgeous girl in the morning. I'm at a bit of a disadvantage. Back to the euphemism so soon, cheeky boy? Consider your points revoked. Amused but satisfied, she turned away as she pulled a tank top over her athletic torso. She only turned back again when her abdomen was fully covered. Despite the self-conscious move, she knew that his eyes hadn't lingered over the massive scar bisecting her hip and right oblique. Common as it was for him to caress the marred skin as a comfort, an assurance that it did not impede her beauty or her sexuality in any way as far as he was concerned, he knew that even the slightest glance there made her uncomfortable. Something she'd appreciated from their first night together. At least promise to meet me for lunch today, he said lazily, barring any criminal catching or robbery halting heroics, that is. She winced. Needling me will get you nowhere, you Irish lug. You know as well as anyone that they still won't let me anywhere near a questionable situation. I'm little more than a glorified paper pusher these days. You're the only one who sees it that way. The whole department sees it that way. I'm just the only one who gives a damn. Try as she might to keep the pained sound of betrayal from her voice, she couldn't. Don't be so glum, love. They're only shunning you because they're intimidated by your awe-inspiring detective skills, fragile egos and all of that. You can't begrudge them a little resentment. She gave him a half-smile that turned into a grimace. Balls. They shun me because they don't trust me. Hell, I wouldn't trust me either. Long moments passed before she realized that she had lost herself in thought. Errol moved to the foot of the bed and looked up at her with concern in his near black eyes. Hey, he said as he wrapped his arms around her waist. It wasn't your fault. She ran her fingers through his dark hair, enjoying the scent of him, the warmth. You don't know that. He exhaled, pressing his cheek against her ribs. You still don't remember any of what happened? No, she began, then paused as he brought his eyes back to hers. Something in the way the light hit them made them appear almost green? Odd. Shaking her head, as if to pull herself from a dream, she focused on her words. I still get these flashes. It's like a part of me remembers. A part of me knows, but the rest of me isn't ready to recognize it. Sounds crazy, right? His hands ran up her spine. Far from it. You're sweet to say that, but... She rested her chin on the top of his head, easing herself back into his lap. Why does there have to be a but? Can't I just be sweet? His smile was disarming. Or did I mess that bit up with too much euphemism? Decklan kissed his temple. The failure isn't yours, Errol. It's mine. There isn't an ounce of failure in you. I've checked. No? Ignoring his gist entirely, she looked askance at him. For your consideration, Mr. Attorney, failure point 1. My psycho serial killer fiancé goes on a rampage, though I presumably didn't see any warning signs. Failure point 2. An entire building collapses, though no one knows why. Failure point 3, and you'll want to pay attention here, because the whole thing kind of kicks into overdrive on this one. I was there, and I have no idea what really happened. No memory of how I survived where countless others didn't, or even how I arrived in the situation to begin with. Factor in a head injury of some sort, and sure, maybe I could buy it. Some forced street drug, an injection, some sign that my memory had otherwise been compromised. But as it stands, it doesn't make sense. It never has. She groaned. And that's not the biggest failure of them all. Detective or not, this is one mystery that I can't even begin to solve. Abandoning all appearances of carnal intent, Errol hugged her tightly and sighed into her skin with a warmth that went to her core. Maybe it isn't yours to solve. Maybe it doesn't make sense because it doesn't need to." She gave him a small smile, one that was almost patronizing, though she didn't mean it to be. She just envied his careless outlook. Rolling with the tide had never been her strong suit. "That's a lot of maybes for someone who knows I'm not to blame." He rolled his eyes. "God, woman, do you have any idea how difficult you can be?" Decklan opened her mouth for a smart reply, but he smoothed the hair from her cheek and drew his thumb over her lips, silencing her. She closed her eyes, enjoying the sensation as much as the quietude it brought her. Her breathing shallowed. "I know," he began again, "because you are the strongest, most self-aware, and world-conscious woman I've ever known. Whatever you did or didn't do that night, or in the days leading up to it, I've no doubt whatsoever that you made the right choices, love, in every way that you knew how." It was the last sentence that hurt the worst, though she knew it had been meant as a comfort. In every way that she knew how. What if she hadn't known any better? "But am I flawless?" She smiled humorlessly, keeping the true meaning of her question to herself. "Perfect and exquisite. Phone in today, Detective Decklan." He broke into her reverie, the gravel returning to his voice as he nuzzled his way up her torso, pulling her mouth down to his. "Stay with me." "I can't," she insisted, her body's receptiveness acting as a protest to her words. "At least for a little while longer." His hands were fervent now, searching, warm. Decklan Holmes tried to think of a reason to argue. But trying and succeeding, as it turned out, were terribly distant things. "You're late," her partner quipped from the other end of the phone. "Yeah, thanks for that little unveiling of observational genius, Roger. I left my watch at the gym, all right? So sue me." Decklan paced back and forth on the subway platform. Where the hell was the train? She was already far later than was normal, even for her. The last thing she needed was a tardy transport. "For that, I'd have to hire your boyfriend, and something tells me I wouldn't enjoy the experience nearly as much as you do, considering how many hours of leave you've taken in order to spend every bloody afternoon at the gym." The innuendo was clear in his tone. "Don't get cute," she half sneered. "Wouldn't dream of it." He bit back through what she assumed was a gruff smile. "But damn it, girlie, of all the days to be running behind. You know how to pick 'em, I'll give you that." Decklan ceased her pacing. "You're angry." "I'm not angry." "Yes, you are. You only call me girlie when you're angry. What's up?" "You really haven't heard?" Roger sighed. "Guess you'll find out soon enough, then. Just get your ass in here as soon as you can." She grinned as the subway rolled into view. "Roger that." "You Roger it, Sherlock. I've been too busy worrying over you to Roger anything these past few years." "Wait. Now you want me to Roger something? Isn't Rogering what's gotten me into trouble in the first place? I'm confused, Roger." Her self-satisfied smile widened as she heard him grumble something into the phone. "Roger?" she intoned once more, just for spite, before he hung up on her altogether. Chuckling aloud, she stuffed the phone into her pocket as her train came to a stop. Then she stepped from the platform onto the car. It hit her all at once. Smell of sweat and liquor, not from the shabby veteran in the third seat, from the woman behind him. Very still, very proper. Scuffs on perfect red heels. She'd been running. Sweat of fear. Alcohol as a coping mechanism. Victim of chronic abuse. Apprehensive young man. Pressed suit. Cut on his chin. Clenched hands. Alternating expressions with no external input. Nervously nicked himself shaving. Now rehearsing silent conversation. Job interview? No. Utilitarian briefcase. Palm resting gently on its hinges. Not meant to impress. Contents important. Worker on the verge of being fired. Hopes to talk his employers into keeping him with whatever is in briefcase. Extortion possible, but unlikely. Common man doubting his own merit. Nurse in unkempt scrubs. Cheap makeup. Jaw jutting angrily at the window. Expensive purse. Top open. Easy access. Resents position in life. Purse's compensation. A pretty place to hide the pretty things she steals from her patients. Notify hospital. Scuffs on the floor. Dried blood on empty seat. Single drop. Smeared. Typical fight. Mild encounter. Serious injury doubtful. New crack in forward window. Unclear fractal pattern. Impact with a bird. Near impossible angle. Rail hazard. Again, impossible angle. Strange. 5 steps from door to open seat. 3 seconds. Silence.